morning. The talk today is on posture. I know that we're going through a time that we're staying at home, having to work at home, and so a lot of times our posture is not as great as it should be because we have poor chairs, we're working in our dining room chairs or chairs that weren't meant to be sat in for more than maybe an hour for a dinner time. So I know you're doing it. You're on your tech devices, whether it's a phone or an iPad or a laptop, and our posture is just like this for sometimes 8 hours a day. Let me tell you how that affects you. First, I want to show you what a perfect posture looks like. In perfect posture, you'll see in the middle picture, the skeleton, the line, it's called a plumb line, that's a straight line. It goes from the ear down to the middle of the shoulder, down to the middle of the hip, the middle of the knee, and then down to the ankle. That's what a perfect posture is. Our body is made in that form, and therefore it functions exquisitely well in that posture. In that posture, you notice the head is directly over the shoulders, and the head weighs 8 to 10 pounds. Everybody's head does. So that's a pretty big weight. If you think about holding a bowling ball up, that's a pretty big weight. So when we're in this posture, hardly any muscles have to turn on because the weight of the head is being translated down directly into the shoulders and the hips and so forth. But when we're in that posture that we're reading on our tech devices, we call that tech neck. Then I'm going to show you a picture that shows you the tech neck. So the picture on the left is that 10-pound weight of a head is above our shoulders and it weighs exactly 10 pounds. But when we start bending our head forward, because the weight is called a lever action, the weight pulls forward and now that 10-pound head is 60 pounds. So if you have to work at home and your head is forward like that, your muscles are holding on to 60 pounds. How many hours? 8 hours? And so what happens is we become in a habit of being in that posture. So then when you stand up, you're kind of in a slouching position. And then that becomes our new normal. But let me tell you why it's important to have a very good posture rather than a slouching tech neck posture. It's because we have parts of our brain that help us do things. You know, our brain is like a spaghetti bowl. Every part of it touches another part of it. So for instance, when we have motion that is supposed to happen, our brain is supposed to tell our body what to do. So the brain has a connection called the spinal cord that goes down through our spine and through each and every vertebra. And those nerves go and tell the organs what to do. While we go into the tech neck posture, those nerves can be compressed. And then when they're compressed, they only give part of the information, probably only about 40% of the information. So then that organ, that part of the body that nerve goes to, is only getting 40% of the information, and pretty soon it will not work with ease. And that's called dis-ease. And eventually you'll start seeing signs and symptoms of the dis-ease. So that's what chiropractors call a subluxation, when the joints are not in the right alignment. And when you're in tech neck, you are not in the right alignment. So another factor is we have nerves that come from the body to tell the brain where we are in time and space. And those nerves come up through the spinal cord, and some of them go into a place called the cerebellum. The cerebellum is in the back of the head, and it works with our balance. It helps us be balanced against gravity. and it does many other things. The cerebellum, when we are developing as crawling babies, that's where cross connections occur, so that if you weren't allowed to crawl, or if you were in a walker, then those cross connections were never made and you have dyslexia. And so one of the ways of helping to cure dyslexia is by getting on your hands and knees and cross crawling. That's an interesting side thing. But anyway, the brain, there's very many connections, of course, in the brain. One thing that the brain, that cerebellum, it informs our prefrontal cortex. That's another part of our brain that's in the frontal part of our head. That helps us, the brain takes and integrates all that information so that it helps us adapt to our environment. And when we have plenty of information into the prefrontal cortex, we're going to be able to adapt well. But when we have a posture that's a tech neck posture, then what happens is there's not a lot of information because of the subluxation. There's not a lot of information going to the cerebellum. So the cerebellum cannot get a lot of information to the frontal cortex. And then what happens is that amygdala, or our emotional part of the brain, which is in the very middle of the brain, doesn't get enough information. And when it does not get enough information, there's anxiety, there's emotion, there's rage, because it needs to have that information in order to calm itself. Motion makes the cerebellum happy, which makes the prefrontal cortex happy, which makes our emotions happy. Now the next picture that I'm going to show you is of a teenager who's slouched. And a teenager who's slouched is going to have that problem with the cerebellum where they don't have enough information. And so the teenager is going to have emotional things that go on. Poor posture is going to lead to motor development problems. Remember I told you that that cerebellum is important with balance? Well, if it's not getting information, it can't make us balance. So you've all seen kids who run into things, who are always tripping. They're the ones who are breaking legs and ankles. It's possibly because they're not getting enough stimulation into that cerebellum. Again, look at this posture. If you have kids that have this posture, that's more apt to happen. If they're not able to balance, then they're going to have gravitational insecurity. So, oh, where's the ground? Oh, where's the ground? And when they begin to have that kind of insecurity, that leads to more insecurities in the rest of their life. And so when you have many insecurities, then you have anxiety. So it's amazing how our body works together and is all connected. Now, if you have anxiety all the time, of course that's going to lead to emotional problems. And if you have emotional problems, that's going to affect the whole rest of your life. You're not going to live with the fullness of life when those things are dampening. And I know I'm getting down to the nitty-gritty, but if all this irritation and anxiety is happening, are you going to be able to concentrate? No. And you're going to have a hard time multitasking. And so these kids, you can't give them too much instruction because they just can't do it. It's not that they don't want to do it, it's they can't do it. Their brain is being... And then they can't cope with a lot of information. So you have to tell them one thing at a time. You might feel this in yourself sometimes. So I want to give you the answer. First, get off your tech devices for a while.
Get off the phone.
Don't be on them for hours at a time. When you do get off of them, get outside.
Just a bit outside.
Go stretch your legs. Go look up to the tops of the trees. Now the reason why I say that is when we're on the tech neck, our head is like this and we're always forward. And then we get in the habit of being that way.
Perhaps I could help you with that hump.
What hump?
And those muscles get tight and they get knotted and they get sore. So what we need to do is go in the opposite direction. So when you're taking a walk, look to the tops of the trees. Stretch your neck. Look up. Go in the opposite direction. And then because our bodies are curved along with our hands being forward and our heads being forward, then you need to, I call it the star stretch. You just want to reach out and you want to go in the opposite direction.
Superstar.
Some people have those big exercise balls and they lay on their backs on the exercise balls and they just stretch. And you know, it's amazing. Just a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of stretching can really alleviate a lot of the stress, lubricate the joints, get them to be more flexible, and you feel generally better.
It's good. It's good.
Take some deep breaths. We talked about breathing last time. Taking deep breaths is going to calm your brain, calm your spirit. So make it a habit to go and do these things at least once a day. And you're going to feel so much better for it, and life is going to feel like it's worth living.
There's one thing the history of evolution has taught us. It's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and it crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but life finds a way.
I hope I've given you some information. I hope it's not been too much information. If you want to know more, if you want to talk about this, I am happy to talk about it. I love to learn about the body, and it's just what turns me on. So ask questions. You can talk to me on the phone. You can talk to me on a text message, text neck. And then if you have any other questions, maybe we can do another one of these. So thank you. I've enjoyed it. Goodbye.